us. Hey, Megan Terry, you get extra credit for being the one who's seeing what Dave and I are trying to figure out here.
That's right. Megan Terry, number one. Okay, so here we are. Hey, look, we are live on Facebook and Instagram at the same time. How cool is that? And you know what? I look at Leigh. Look, she's just like, isn't she the nuts? Look at that.
I guess, but now I got to pick which camera I'm going to look at.
Oh, yeah. Which camera are we supposed to look at? I don't know. And my notes as well. Anyway, we are nuts here. My name is Dave Finale, and this is Real Estate Talk TGIF. And that stands for what? Thank God it's finale. Not Friday, finale. It is Friday, but thank God it's finale. Today is really cool. Not only are we live on both Instagram and Facebook, I have the one and only Leigh Thomas Brown here. I have been the biggest fan of Leigh's for years. I didn't tell you this, but I download some of your videos to keep them in a file so I can use them for A, inspiration, and B, information. So it's really good to see you. Thank you so much for being on my broadcast today, which is number 51, by the way, 51 weeks in a row.
Also, your anniversary's next week. Oh.
Yes, 52, number 52. And next week for 52, just give a quick promo. We have Kayla Laos on from Arizona. I don't know Kayla, but Kayla has a company called JK Realty with her husband, a really cool, innovative real estate company. Kayla's going to be on. I met Kayla through my buddy John Cheplack and some other great people, Jason Frazier, et cetera, all those people. So name dropping here. But it's time for us to really talk about what we're going to talk about today, Leigh.
Well, I wrote down that I got to get to know Kayla, so that's my big takeaway right now, is somebody you need to get to know.
She's really cool. So we can talk about real estate or we can talk about baseball. What should we talk about today?
Well, I'm depressed today because Florida State is out of the College World Series, and Mike Martin has retired after 40 years of coaching.
I saw that, and too bad it wasn't with a championship. But look at it from my standpoint. The Yankees have won 6 in a row. Aaron Judge is back in the lineup tonight. So, but you know what? I think people would rather hear us talk about real estate. So let's hit that.
Probably. Let's do it.
So tell me about your journey, your travels. Where did Leigh come from, and what has made you, with your attitude and everything, your great attitude, you're a great human being. How did you get to where you are today?
So, if I want to be tacky, I can quote my favorite Steve Martin movie. Do you remember The Jerk, where he says at the beginning, "I was born the son of a poor black sharecropper"? You can never make that movie now because of the PC police, but that's like one of the funniest lines ever.
Right.
I was not born the son of a poor black sharecropper, but I was born on a farm, and I grew up as a farm kid. In fact, my kids today are helping my uncle because it's important for kids to work really early because farm life teaches you that. So, went to school, all that fun stuff. I bartended after I got out of college because I did not know what to do with my life. And then I became a stockbroker because one of my regulars hired me. And I did not belong in Manhattan. And I'll give all of y'all like 2 seconds to guess why Leigh Brown did not belong in Manhattan.
No.
And it boils down to the first time I tried to order a sandwich at the deli and I asked for rye bread. And the lady could not figure out what I'm on. I'm like, rye. And she couldn't figure it out. And I got frustrated and left. And so anyway, I didn't last in Manhattan. And so I came home to Charlotte and I was looking for a job, and I drove by the North American headquarters for Husqvarna, which is the world's premium chainsaws, lawnmowers, and weed trimmers. It's a Swedish company. We had Husqvarnas on the farm, and so I drove in and said, "I'm looking for a job," and I got hired.
Well, that's good.
It's so different than real estate where you don't get it if you don't ask for it. And so as it turns out, they needed a woman on the sales force because they didn't have any. And so I became, after a short stint in inside sales to learn the product, I went out on the road as the only female salesperson selling chainsaws, weed trimmers, and lawnmowers. And that was an amazing experience, but I didn't belong in the corporate world because paperwork and rules. And then, of course, your pay scale is nothing you can control. And anybody that's been in corporate sales knows if you get successful, they just change your allotment so that you never really make any more money.
Right.
So I came home and got into business with my dad, and that's where I've been now for 19 years as a realtor, coming up on 20, which means I have to think of something really cool to do next year for my past clients and my future clients. And so, yeah, that's where I am.
Well, I guess you could write another book because you're an author of 2 books, best-selling author, right?
Yes.
one is called The Seven Deadly Sins of Real Estate. Is that right? Or selling?
The Seven Deadly Sins of Sales. And actually, a lot of mortgage lenders like that one because they have the same sins that we do. And the first one was outrageous authenticity, talking about how you have to be yourself to be really successful in sales. And I think that's getting more and more critical, Dave, because we're in a world now that if you say something off kilter, boy, you are going to be punished.
Yeah, and that's true in our PC world, and I'm really like on that border and really don't really look at it that way. I believe that we should say what we think because there's too much held back, and I know a lot of people are worried about hurting each other's feelings and stuff. But when we talk about real estate agents and we talk about doing things differently, what do you see as the biggest issue where realtors don't succeed rather than do succeed?
Well, the first reason realtors don't succeed is they fall into the trap of laziness. And I know that's going to hurt some feelings. And you'll say, Leigh Brown, I'm not lazy. I'm going to say, yeah, you think you're prospecting, but you spent 6 hours on Facebook clicking like, and you were on LinkedIn clicking thumbs up. And that's not prospecting. Let's be honest about it. And then you sit there and you fritter away your whole day and you come talk to me because I'm your broker and you tap on my door and say, I need some leads. And I'm the one that says, what have you done today to get some? And you're thinking, but you should hand it to me. And so we have, a lot of people like to blame the millennials for being the society, the generation that's been handed trophies and given everything, but they learned it from somewhere. And we have a lot of realtors that think it should be handed to them. The most successful realtors I know, and these are people that have been doing it, whether it's 5 years or 30 years, they're the top producers in their market. Every single day they prospect. And prospecting can look like picking up your phone. And this is what I tell realtors, because I'll tell you, I know why they don't prospect. It's not just laziness, it's also fear, but that's part of our discussion as we go into this a little bit. But they don't know who to call. All right, you have a cell phone, it's got contacts in it. Go to the contacts and call the first A and say, hey. And then they don't know what to say. So you're like, well, Leigh Brown, what should I say? And I say, you need to say, hey, I was thinking about you. Come on, rebuild the connection and the relationship. Too many people have taken bad real estate training for years that says you got to call and say, well, who do you know that needs to buy or sell a house? And that's just gross and icky. All you need to do is call and say hey to people.
Well, that's
every single day.
There's so many things that you just said that are so simple and so basic. So in the programs that I work with, and when I work with agents, we talk about structure first. So there's 3 things we talk about: structure, exposure, and differentiation, right? The structure, people talk about a foundation. Well, the foundation is worthless unless you have a footing. Now, if anybody knows about construction, you have to have a solid footing. Maybe it's a spread footing. Maybe it's a thicker footing. And that footing has to be what your schedule is going to be to a point. And then your structures, your systems, and your processes on top of that with your sphere of influence, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So structure is so very important. And when you have that, everything else, although you may have to learn stuff and how picking up the phone is going to work, goes right after that. The structure is so important. But you know what? There are so many easy ways to get stuck in that Facebook vortex, to get sucked in, And what I say is, okay, you want to do that? Just go, hey, Siri, give me an 8-minute countdown. And when that's over,
your timer is set for 8 minutes.
See, Siri just said that, right?
That's actually a really good way to use her because she doesn't speak Southern, but I could probably figure out how to make her understand a countdown. But you do get sucked in and you think you're prospecting, but you're not. Right. You're arguing about politics with somebody from another state. That's not building your real estate business. Exactly.
And it's prospecting is the basis of our business. You have to go after it. We were talking about this before. Even car salesmen, they don't have to be, we talked about being at the right time, right place at the right time, right? We talked about that a little before. And car salesmen, they're there when you walk in. The most productive ones will actually call you as you go along. But let's talk about the real estate agent's value as perceived by the consumer. What is the way that we can improve that, and how can they add value to their businesses?
So I like how you ask how we're perceived by the consumer, because the consumer obviously is a product of mass media. And mass media says that realtors look like Annette Bening in American Beauty, where she stands there and says, I will sell this house today. And she's like cleaning the ceiling fan and running the vacuum at her slip. And she's kind of gross and she's sleeping with another realtor. I mean, the whole thing's awful. And then you have Phil Dunphy from Modern Family, which
Right.
I was not thrilled when that was part of our advertising campaign as realtors, but luckily it didn't last long because I think they thought that it was a play with young people, but he's a buffoon. And part of his main thing was he could get into any window at any time. I have never crawled through a window, not going to. And I've been in crawl spaces, but I have not been through a window. That's not what we do. And then the public too often gets somebody who is not as trained as they should be and is not as ethical as they should be. And then their coloring of who we are as a profession gets taken by that one experience. And so they think we're paid too much and we do too little. So let's think about that best realtor. The best realtor can argue all day long where their value is. Well, their value is in that they're very transparent with the consumer. They tell the buyers and sellers, here's what I do for you. Here's all the things I'm doing. And that transparency shows the value. So if you're going to be the realtor on Facebook, you can't just sit there and say, I sold 87 houses. You can say, I crawled in 87 crawl spaces. I mean, that's a different way to put it forth, although I probably don't recommend that because then it sounds like you want to do that and that's home inspector work.
True.
So the public needs to understand that if you are committed to this profession, that you want to be a professional in it all the time. And part of being professional all the time is exactly what Dave said was structure. And so I was showing my little piece of blue paper here. And those of you that follow me know this is a buyer lead sheet for me. We keep them on blue. And they're on blue so we can find them because realtors are notoriously disorganized. My papers on my desk otherwise are all of these. They're white. You can't find a lead.
Right.
My smaller lead sheets are on yellow paper. And they're yellow so I can find them. But the reason I have these everywhere is because I want to ask the same questions of everybody with whom I speak, because that also defines your professionalism.
It does.
So it's the way that you act in your market that changes what the public thinks of realtors, because you can't ask the association to fix it. You can't tell Hollywood to behave because they won't. And you can't tell your state real estate commission to raise the bar. It's us who has to raise the bar. And one by one, we can. And so the consumer then meets you and gets a different experience. They call somebody who's not to your level. They maybe won't call them. So we have to train them through actions.
Well, exactly right. And it's you know, you said something about the ethics of our business. And I'm going to do a little sidetrack on that one a little bit because I've seen it where, you know, people don't call you back and they don't, you know, they're just like, you know, no showings until like 10:31 of Sunday, and then it ends at 10:35. You see a lot of that stuff going on these days because of how the market has been. But, you know, I think what you said is so perfect and so true is that we need to step ourselves up rather than worrying about raising the bar, because let's face it, that's never going to change where it's more difficult to get into our business.
No.
People say, well, you should have a college degree or you should have apprenticeship. Apprenticeship would be nice, don't get me wrong, but that's not going to happen. It's not going to change because it's up to the states, and we're all for I'm sorry, this might hurt somebody's feelings, is we're all for getting that trophy, right? So so giving value of ourselves has to be how we act. And I also believe, you know, I use this word, we're all interchangeable. I think 80% to 90% of the agents out there are interchangeable. They're all the same. It should be different. And what you said was, instead of saying I just did my 87th closing, say I just crawled through my 87th house or whatever. So moving along with that is there's a lot of things going on in our lives and our business where there's a shift going on, or people talk about the shift. I believe that the shift is just what's happening with supply and demand in our economy through the cycle.
Right, it's cyclical, correct.
Right. So, and a lot of people say, oh, well, I'm worried about the shift. I got it ready for the shift. And, you know, there's a book out there called The Shift, which will work for any shift, right? And it's actually a very good book.
I think that's my favorite of Gary Keller's books. And I'm a Remaxer, so I just admitted out loud that a Remaxer can read a Keller Williams book and you won't die. That one's actually really good.
You guys know, I actually took a bunch of notes as I read that book. So, and that's really cool. So, and I was always a Century 21 agent and a broker, you know, so there's a shift going on. But what do you see in your market, and what do you see nationwide as far as this shift?
Well, I'm a nerd, and so I look at economic indicators, and traditionally, so if you look at it over decades, when the mortgage yield curve gets suppressed, that's your leading indicator of a recessionary period. However, the yield curve has been suppressed now for a couple of years, and so we're out of cycle. So something doesn't make sense right now. The economic indicators don't add up, and so that's why you're noticing in most markets, days on market are starting to increase. Now, it's not that we've gone back to the Great Recession with 210 days on market, but it goes from 47 multiple offers in 24 hours to 4 offers over 5 days. And that's a shift that a lot of agents will be slow to catch on to, because in their head, I sold it in multiple offers in less than a week. But if you look at how those numbers stack up, that's a monumental change when you start to see a shift. And here in Charlotte, we've noticed that prices are still increasing, but the rate at which they're increasing has slowed. And when the rate at which prices increase has slowed and days on market slowly edge up, you're at the front end of something shifting. And that's going to be hard for realtors to adjust to, because first of all, the ones who lived through 2008, 2013, I really do think, this is not even a joke, I think they have PTSD of some nature, because they don't talk about the dark years. They don't remember the dark years. They have blown it out of their minds because it was so painful, and we lost so many good realtors because of their own bad financial habits. Let's be very honest about that. Realtors have terrible money skills in their personal lives, so they weren't equipped for an echo, Jenny. I don't know how to fix that. It's probably because we have 2 different live feeds. Let me back up and see if that helps.
Okay.
You look at what happened in that downturn. They didn't have any money. They didn't have a cushion to fall back on.
Right.
I think a lot of realtors do have that now. And I think that when the recessionary period hits, it won't be as severe, but there's going to be one, because real estate is cyclical. And you look at all these years, it just happens. But we have so many new realtors, though, Dave, who have come in since 2013, and they've only known an increasing market. And so because they only know an increasing market, they're equipped to know how to deal with a changing market condition, unless they've been wise enough to get a mentor. Now, I was lucky in that I had my dad as my mentor until he retired. And you mentioned briefly an apprenticeship period. Oh my gosh, that would do so many wonders for our business if we had an apprenticeship period where a newer realtor could have guidance when the market shifts. Because here's the reality of it, and this drives me crazy. When the market shifts and realtors are on the front lines of helping property owners know how to adjust to it, if realtors are late to the game with education, they harm people. And It's not intentional and it's not malicious, but we saw it happen in the last downturn when in our market in Charlotte, we were behind Florida and Nevada and Arizona. They went down first. We were slower to come down because we weren't that hot. So we started to fall off around the latter part of 2007, first part of 2008. And you had realtors still going to listing appointments. I can sell it in 90 days because that was the comp. Well, if you use a 6-month-old comp at that time, it was worthless. And so they put a house on the market, then they chased the ball downhill. 6 months later, the prices have fallen off the cliff, and the seller could have sold it for more 6 months previously with better information. So a long way to explain it, but if you're watching this and you're a newer realtor, and by newer, I mean since 2013, so all you've known is an up market, go get a mentor, go create a relationship with an older realtor who can give you some guidance, who can tell you some resources, tell you what to read besides in the news, which y'all read that for kind of the TMZ of real estate, but you need to understand some economic indicators. How do you read market stats? Talk to your local MLS. We have great staff members at every MLS in the country who can explain to you how the numbers work. You've got to get educated. And that way you can be also not just different when the market shifts, you can be different right now.
Right.
Your seller craves information, and that's why they go online. They think they can get it from Zillow or Realtor.com or any of the websites, and those won't give them the very specific micro local opinions of a realtor who's gotten educated. You have so much ability to have impact.
What I did recently, I did a video on how to do a market statistics video, and and it was prompted by me watching another agent doing it, and they were sitting there and they were doing their video, and they edited it, and every now and then you saw them pick up a piece of paper and read the statistic. To me, I'm going to call bullshit on that simply because, you don't know what you're talking about. And not only that, you need to know what you're talking about. And most importantly, for me, have an opinion.
Yes.
Right? Have an educated opinion as to what you're talking about. And this way you can really be different, right?
It's a huge differentiator. Think about it. Your competitors go to a buyer or a listing appointment, and typically their pitch is, I'm great. I'm number one. My
Right.
company's number one. I have a website. I'll put a sign in your yard. They're saying the same things everybody else says. You walk in and you say, let's talk data, let's talk numbers. Instantly, you've got credibility with that consumer. And all you have to do, by the way, because some of y'all are not nerds and you're throwing up in your mouth a little bit at the idea of memorizing stats, get to know one or two. All you have to do is know something and then feed on that and say it with confidence. And if you're wrong by a little bit, be wrong, but be confident, but know something and research it. I mean, I'm telling you, say it 3 times out loud, you'll know it.
Oh, yeah. I want to emphasize that point of 1 or 2. Like I tell people, look, if you're going to do a market statistics, oops, I almost lost that one. You're back.
My
If you're going to do a market statistics video or a report, first of all, have an opinion, but have 5 statistics. And the reason I say 5 is because you're probably going to forget 3 if you're doing it live or off the cuff.
That's fair. Right?
And this way you've got 2 you can talk about. And the 5 are typical, average price, median price, out days on market, yada, 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 so on and so forth. But this way, but you have them and like you said, just be confident about it. If you make a mistake, so what? So someone's going to tell you you're wrong. Guess what? You made a mistake. Someone tells you you're wrong. You're more famous today than you were yesterday. Right. And it's
especially if you're humble enough to come back and say, I said this and I was wrong. People love it when you're willing to get better. I make mistakes all the time. It's one of my big skills in life is to make mistakes and have to go back and apologize and fix my screw ups because I'm human. I let it all hang out there.
Well, yeah, exactly that. And I hope, I believe myself to be the same. So when we're talking about doing different things, you mentioned a 4-letter word before, and it was fear. And everybody, everybody can talk about, Brendan Burchard talks about this in his book. It's not Millionaire Mindset, it's Millionaire Messenger. And he talks about, everybody talking about fear, false expectations appearing real. Fear is one thing. Forget the acronym. Let's talk about how to get over the fear and have a mindset for that. So I want to talk a little bit about mindset, shifting from that to this. Where do you think an agent can build a more positive mindset? In other words, coming from a point of abundance rather than scarcity.
All right. First of all, turn off all the negative Facebook groups that you're in. And a lot of these realtor groups on Facebook are incredibly negative. I won't name them by name, but y'all know which ones they are. And all they say is hateful things about each other or about buyers or about sellers or about brands or about this or that. Anytime the conversations start to go downhill, get out of it quickly, because if you read it, it starts to feed you. The second thing I'll tell you is have that structure in place to make the disciplined phone calls. Because reality is this, what you're afraid of today is probably what I talk to agents about their fear of. It's the hedge funds, it's the open doors, offer pads, iBuyers. You're scared of that primarily because it's new and because it's taking a piece of the market. Now, the reality is this, not every seller is going to go down that road. Not every buyer is interested in going down that road. But in your head, you heard the advertising and you thought they would be. So what you got to do is call your people, the ones who love you and who take your phone call. They don't even hit decline. They hit accept and they say, hey, and you say, hey, what you doing? And then you keep the relationships alive. I mean, every time somebody says they're going to disintermediate realtors, it doesn't happen because our role is this. We are not the ones who buy and sell houses. We do not create wealth. And realtors drive me crazy saying they create wealth. You don't. It's the buyers who make good decisions who do. Don't be so arrogant like that. But what we are is the emotional caretaker of somebody's largest financial instrument. So if you start remembering that what you do is the things websites can never do and hedge funds don't want to do, but that the consumer actually values and needs, it helps you keep your forward momentum. So you stay out of the negative, make your phone calls, and remember what it is that you actually do. And by the way, when you say that, and you said one of your 3 pillars is the branding and the messaging, look at business cards for realtors. I love to collect them when I do events. And I could put all these in a hat and shake them out and they would look the same. The only thing different from card to card is headshots. What if your business card said something about who you are and the way that you conduct your business so that people knew more about you from the simplest of your marketing pieces? And by the way, and I'll cover up the company and the name on this in case y'all have like a screen that can read it. This card says the finest compliment I can receive is a referral from my friends and clients. That's tacky and gross. Nobody has ever given a realtor a piece of business because the back of their card says they want it. And I think Brian Buffini is a victim of his own success because he's been training for years. I'm never too busy for your referrals, which sounds good on the surface, but you said that 4-letter word too. And that 4-letter word is the other one that hurts realtors, and that's the busy excuse. You're too busy for classes. You're too busy for this. You're too busy for that. And the minute you keep saying it, your prospective client heard you say you're busy, and they thought to themselves, well, maybe he's too busy. So don't even say it. Why don't you put on the back of your card, say, proud to have attended every school board meeting for the last 4 years. The buyers and sellers out there would say, oh, that person understands the impact of public education on property values. I'll call her. Or what if your card says, I have personally fostered 47 basset hounds? People will be drawn to the fact that you are of some depth that's different than everything else. Because remember, what are we? Emotional caretakers, and emotional caretakers are people who know how to connect. You connect with emotion. You're not connecting over text and Facebook.
Exactly. I mean, you talk about that, and you talk about the value. You talk about being different, and all this stuff. I mean, it's just business cards. And it's funny you mentioned the referral thing, is because I know Jimmy Mackin and Chris Smith have been talking about this, I think, since last NAR convention, as I saw, and Jimmy or Chris, I'm not sure which one, did a post about showing all those sayings on Instagram, and it was hilarious. And their water cooler addressed a lot of that this week. If you guys don't know, Jimmy Mackin and Chris Smith, curator, they do a show called Water Cooler every Wednesday at 1:00. Give shout outs to them. They both have been on the show.
Hey, look, Dave, they might have had a guest in 2013 that brought all this up, just saying.
Oh, that was you. Thank you. See, I gotta tell you, one of the things that always concerns.
But it is fun about this business, though, because we honestly do think a lot of the same things, and we can say it in different markets, and so we can all take credit for it because it's all good. It's a fun part.
Exactly. And one of the things I said, and I worked with John Cheplack for years and years, and I said to him, I said, John, I'm going out into this different space. I'm going to sound like you. I'm going to sound like. He says, Dave, where do you think I got all the stuff from? I didn't make it all up. Some of it's original, but not a lot of it. So I mean, we all use other stuff, and I give out the names I heard it from. There's stuff I've heard from you, and I'm going to throw this one out because this I got from you. I said to you earlier, 5-6 years ago, and people are looking for ways of doing business, and we've talked about the sphere of influence a little bit today, but there's so many other things with expires and FSBOs and all that stuff. There's one other way where people can get long-term clients. You know what I'm talking about?
What?
Well, that would be when someone actually buys a home and you're the listing agent, and then the buyer's agent kind of forgets about them. What do we call those?
We call those orphans.
That's right. And how does that work?
Okay, I tried the earbuds, Colleen, or that Colleen McMahon. It didn't work. So I don't know why we have echo, but I was trying to solve it, didn't solve it.
No, it's good.
So I learned about orphans by being part of Howard Brenton's Star Power Network, which is the first thing my dad made me do when I got into the business 19 years ago, was he plugged me into Star Power. So I learned about orphans from other top producing realtors at the very beginning of my baby real estate career. And that's one of the things that, just mentioned it. Dave and I kind of laughed about it, but it's so true. Best practices in real estate aren't exclusive to any one person.
Exactly.
And the best realtors love sharing. They will tell you everything that they do, and they will tell you everything that they've learned. They'll tell you the mistakes that they've made so that you can be better and you can shorten the learning curve. But an orphan It's so interesting because realtors will get mad at me for suggesting it because they say, well, I shouldn't be trying to steal their client. All right, here's the reality. When closing has occurred and the house has changed hands, your agency ended and my agency ended. And so the buyer and the seller have now moved back into the marketplace. They are free agents. My job as a realtor is to protect and preserve real estate. I really believe that I have to preserve what the consumer thinks about our profession for your good going forward, whether I get the deal again in the future or not. So I call the orphan buyer, so the person who bought my listing, we call them 3 days after closing. Hey, how are you? Do you need anything? It's not a prospecting phone call, all right? Because they're not really buying anything right now. They just moved in. I'm trying to uncover pain points. Because when you uncover pain points, you can fix them. And one thing that we get on the regular is your seller stole the garage door opener. All right, look, most people stick it in the glove box and they forget it's there because they open the car like this, poking the top of their car.
Right.
They don't use the button anymore, but the buyers want it because they haven't programmed it yet. And you got to reset the button on the back of the unit. And it's all this drama. Well, if I find out they're mad, I'm not calling my seller and saying, y'all need to go find that garage door opener. I go to Lowe's and I buy a $25 universal and carry it to the buyer so we can solve the pain point. Because y'all, when you don't solve it, that buyer's just sitting over there mad. They may or may not call their agent because to them it's trivial. They don't want to bother you because they know you're a big deal, but they're mad. And so what happens is 6 months and 12 months and a year later, and then this realtors suck. And they start with this whole realtor suck thing because we all get broad brushed into the same bucket every single time. And so my job is to take care of them after the transaction. So we send a copy of the closing statement, that CD or the HUD, depending on cash or closing. And I love that, by the way, the realtors who tell me HUDs don't exist, they do in cash deals. And so if you're not doing cash deals, that's proof. So anyway, the HUD of the CD, we send a signed copy. Here it is for your taxes. And hey, if their realtor sent them one because they're on the ball, that means that buyer got two. And that means they think it's a standard practice for realtors to do good things for the people who buy and sell houses. That's never bad. That's never a bad investment of your time. And so one thing I'll tell you is as you take care of the people on the other side of transactions, remember this, what you do for one, you do for all. Make sure that you are the best proponent of federal fair housing possible by doing for everybody. Now, your argument to me, and I can hear you through the phone, but Leigh, that other agent is very good. I know they followed up. That's fine. You still got to do for all. And if they call you and say, hey, my people are cool, we've handled it, then you can stop. But make sure that you're not putting yourself in harm's way by picking and choosing. Just do it for everybody. And just remember it's for the greater good. You may or may not get business later, but you usually do.
And I think there's what you just said is one of the things, again, it's one of the things that I work on when I talk about structure in my program is, okay, so you don't like doing something in your business, or maybe you do, but it's all got to be a process. You do it for everybody. So, as you build your business, just make it a habit of doing the same thing for everybody. And it's a process that you have. It's a written down process. It's sales process 3C that you do for everybody. And it's just how you do business, which is, the greatest advice I think anybody could ever give to any realtor. So we've been on for a little while. And by the way, if anybody doesn't know, we are both live on Instagram and Facebook at the same time. A wonderful technology day.
We apologize for the echo. We don't really know how to fix it, but maybe next time we will, since we were totally living outside the box here. Sometimes you try things and they're not perfect, but you tried it.
And we decided to do this at 1 minute to 11 today. So anyway, I wanted to shout out to people that have chimed in. Kristen Haynes says thank you. Jeremiah from Monero. J-Man, okay, he's on.
We love J-Man. He's a big deal. He's speaking at the Nartech Edge coming up here, so he's a great one to go hear speak.
I've seen him speak in New Jersey and keep it real and authentic. He's in the door, a friend and client of mine. Thanks for the episode. Paul Giannino, hello, PG Home Inspections. So thanks for chiming in with us and talking to us. And Leigh, what one thing, if there is one thing, or what do you think is really important for an agent to really stand out in the crowd? Because let's face it, we know our business. We know how to do our business. We know that we need to be ethical, right? If there's one thing that a realtor can do to enhance their value, what would it be?
Oh, the number one thing to enhance their value?
Or one thing.
Oh,
There's millions of number one things I believe that they should do.
well, I think they should learn how to tell the truth. And here's what that means. Realtors love to tell people, I'll get you the most money for your house. And in fact, I love challenging a room full of realtors. Raise your hand if you think all sellers want top dollar for their house. Oh, they all raise their hands because they've been trained to believe this, and that's groupthink. But I want you to remember this. There's a lot of people that have been through ugly divorces, and I mean like the kind where you don't sit in the kitchen because the knives are in the kitchen. That person wants the house gone. Not necessarily the money. They want the house gone. And so when you start to realize that, you've got to ask different questions. And you've got to be able to lean into what the consumer wants to hear, which means you tell the truth. Because if the comps in your house show 250 to 300, but they want it gone immediately, you do yourself a damage when you promise them top dollar and a quick sale. Tell the truth and say, if it has to be gone tonight, let's price it on the low end. Might get multiple offers, might not, but that's going to help you accomplish your goal. Realtors are known for doing their own bidding instead of what's best for the person across the table. But frankly, you both benefit when you do what's best for them.
Absolutely. That's such a great point to make. And you know what? Never be afraid to say, I don't know. You know, say, I don't know. I don't know. I'll find out. People don't want to be wrong. I think they'd rather be wrong than beyond sometimes. You know, just like you said. That makes sense.
I think you're right, because our whole society has that right now. There's very little personal responsibility. There's very little desire to say, I screwed up, or we need to make an adjustment. And frankly, that's been a big building block in my business, to tell the truth and be humble. And they ask you a question, you say, well, I don't know, but let me find out. I mean, that's one of the beauties of Realtor Nation. There's 1.3 million realtors, 10% of whom do most of the business. And they're mostly really great humans who will do anything to help other people. Well, I'm not going to lie to a seller that I know something I don't know. I'm going to go find somebody that does. And if we tap into that brain. But you have to be okay being wrong. Real estate's not an exact science. And we had this conversation with the seller just last week. They're selling a new home where the builder has nothing available, but there are no resale comps in the neighborhood. So we're about to be the first resale comp in the neighborhood. So you walk into that appointment, you don't have comps. The market data is all over the place because new operates differently than resale. And those of y'all that are in not new markets, you're jealous. Don't be. It's a different beast altogether. And so we had to say, look, here's a bunch of information. We're totally guessing here. So we could pick a number out of the air. I'll defend it as best I can to the appraiser, but the buyers in the market will have to determine the price, and we'll just have to go from there.
And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, that's human, that's real, and it's the way it should be. And just think from, what's right in your soul and what's right for everything else to do. Leigh, I want to thank you so much for coming on. We're almost up to time, and I know because you told me, or I told you, or whatever. There is an important thing that I do at the end of every show. You know what that is?
Oh, there's the fancy hat.
Right, you get this hat, and it can be used for baseball. It can be used for golf or whatever, or it could just be used when you're running and stuff. Because I understand you're a runner. Right?
I am. But I don't wear good hats when I run. I wear running hats. But I could wear that on a bad hair day.
You could do that as well. Yes, but this is what everybody gets that joins me, and I'm so happy to be able to send this to you. And honestly, thank you so much. It's been a lot of fun, and we made this appointment a while ago, and I've really been looking forward to this. And I think it lived up to its billing for me, and I hope we share some great stuff for people. Thank you so much for coming on, and I look forward to running into you at events and talking to you in the future.
Well, and thank you for the opportunity, and thank you for all that you're putting out there to help realtors get better, because frankly, we learn better from each other, and I appreciate all that you're putting out there.
Thank you so much, Leigh. Just stay on for a minute as we say goodbye, and guys, we'll see you next week. Next week is episode 52. Kayla Laos from Arizona is going to be out of JK Realty, a really cool office. She has really cool company. She's going to talk about her innovations and some new stuff she's got coming out. So Kayla's going to be on next week. Can't wait. Leigh, thank you very much. We'll see everybody next week. Thanks.